Welcome back, everybody, to the Courts of Chaos. We're getting close. We're getting oh so close. Well, I'm technically already here when you're watching this because it should be Friday, and I should be, in Brittany, and hopefully waking up not too hungover from a short night of sleep. I guess we will find out. I guess I will find out. Anyway, not what we're here for today. We're here for the Hand of Oberon, which is book 4 in the first Chronicles of Amber series, the Corwin cycle, so to speak. And it is getting interesting and weirder, isn't it? So, let's have us a talk about it. Well, cheers! Alright, so let's look at what we got this time around, what's interesting, what's important, and what's not so important, sort of. And I feel like when Sign of the Unicorn went and gave us a detective novel, so to speak, a whodunit kind of crime story, asking the question, who's the evil person behind it all, and did not give us an answer, although we didn't even find out who killed what's his buddy, who killed Cain. We don't know yet. This one switches more into like action thriller territory in the way it is handled, because from like sitting around in a place and talking all the time, we come to running around a good deal, but we're still fairly well in the like average pace, like not months or week or years passing with stuff happening and so forth. No, we are very much across that nexus, that really like center point of Sign of the Unicorn, with looking at stuff that will happen now. And the big revelation obviously is who the big bad guy in this mess is, and other aspects that come around that. So, where do we go? Like, most of it is literally about hunting down a red herring, something that our good buddy Roger Zelazny made already joking reference about in an earlier book. I think it was in Sign of the Unicorn, I guess, possibly, or maybe one before that. Anyway, it's all about finding the Jewel of Judgment that needs to be found again, because with that one we can do a lot of very interesting things, and it's also about other things. It's about the fallout of the original pattern. Now, we know that there is an even older version of the pattern, an original pattern that, came from somewhere, I suppose. And we deal with that. We also find out what marred the pattern, right? Blood of Amber was shed across that inscribed pattern. And we know whose blood it is. It is Martin's blood. That is Random's son, who is somewhere out there, and we don't really know where yet, right? Okay, so we basically have a bunch of searches going on for pieces that we need to find to complete the puzzle of who's evil, what's going on, and so on. Now, we find out the Brand is the evil one fairly early on, I guess, when people talk with different people and figure out who lied about what and so forth. And then we come to, like, certain parts that I feel are more important here. Like, when the last one was very much about like psychology, this one is more about psychopathology. Is that the word? Like, or psychosis? I don't want to call it psychosis, because the question is Brand evil? Is he insane? And who knows and who's to blame? That's sort of like the final answer, question at the end. But until then, we also talk about something that has obviously been a huge issue here before. We spoke about that before quickly, right? And that is family. First of all, we find out who Dworkin is. He's the father of Oberon. And he came from chaos, and he created the pattern, and he, I guess, fathered Oberon on someone, we don't know who. And, you know, it kind of comes from there. I think that's like an important aspect here, like the whole idea of how family, like problems within a family, are continually perpetuated. We also learn that, yes, Amber is the creation of someone who came out of chaos and enforced order on the universe, on the world, in a way. And, you know, well, that kind of harkens back to that whole, like, artist idea. So that one's a neat trick there, right there. What else does happen here? I feel there's like a few key conversations in this book that prepare us sort of for the final stretch. We have like the big twist near the end with a surprise. We have we kind of learn what will happen now, what has to happen now, and prepare us for that final one. We'll talk about all of that at the end of Courts of Chaos, when we'll analyze, or not analyze, but look at the like full structure of this like arc of a story, because I feel we can learn a lot from that and see how all of it basically reads like one long novel. In fact, I guess with those short novels, it hasn't even like the length of like a full-on Brown and Sanderson novel or like a Malazan Book of the Fallen novel, and you could just like publish the whole thing and read it as one novel. All right, so what's the key conversations there? The first one is obviously finding out that Martin has been sacrificed, or at least hurt, to cover part of the pattern of the artwork. We also can infer that Dworkin was driven mad by that attack on the pattern. So, because he inscribed the pattern out of the Jewel of Judgment, which is our, interestingly, big red herring. Luckily enough, it is at least red. And so there's like a connection. If you destroy the pattern, you also hurt the creator of the pattern, which, has all kinds of philosophical implications that are interesting and neat to ponder. But I guess what we can mostly take from it is something that we see a lot of during the entire series, which is growing up, becoming more human in a way. And that's something like a theme that we see throughout this entire series, right? They are all basically children of chaos, which we'll learn there. And they try to find their humanity in all kinds of ways. Corwin found it probably while hanging out on Earth. That shadow Earth. Random apparently finds it in love with Vial, and that's like the other really important and well done conversation that I personally really enjoyed in this one. I mean, we might have to look at the fact that she's another blind character, and I still want to do like a video on like the portrayal of blindness in fantasy fiction. I'm gathering data on that one, or regathering data on that one. And there's a few interesting hints there, but the main issue that we have in that conversation between Corwin and Vial, mostly about Random and like the past, I think a lot of that is interesting because it almost reads like having like an actual like therapy session where Corwin is looking at his emotions towards Random, and she's telling about Random's emotion towards him, and they're kind of working out who they are now and how they have changed over time and what has made them more human in a way. And just the tenderness with which Roger Zelazny approached that conversation is, I feel, not unique, but it's certainly impressive. And it shows what can be done in such a short novel, in such a short book, with very little, with little page count and like a very sparse characterization of people, because we have like very little like on these characters from the outside, right? Then there's another important aspect, something that we already looked at but I didn't speak about in sign of the unicorn, and that is Earth, which is arguably the place that makes Corwin the person that he is. And you can read Corwin's deeds, or like Corwin's journey, as another one of those heroes' journeys, right? He goes to a place of darkness where he loses part of himself, and he gains something when he comes back, to follow the whole Campbell kind of way of looking at things, which I don't personally really appreciate, but it's there, and you can assume that people like Roger Zelazny have read it and find their own approaches to that theory, because once it is there, and we've already established that Zelazny is interested in Jung and especially in Freud here, which I guess explains a lot of the father complexes that we have in this book as well. So let's look at that. He comes to Earth, he does that, but he has to recapture parts of that. And what we learn here is mostly him reconstructing what really happened to him, who did what to him, and then going back to find the Jewel of Judgment and finding out that Brand has already stolen it. I think it's interesting to see what we have there structurally, though, because it's like Bran was the one to be saved in the last book. Now he turns out to be the ultimate villain who has gone actually insane. And it makes a lot of sense to have it that way, because he's certainly reverting to chaos there. And it is that idea of having that polarity between chaos and order that is so important for this world. Because, it kind of spends... is that tension in every human person, right? We all tend to oscillate up to a point, at least, between chaos and order, which I guess makes it such a powerful theme in fantasy fiction. Once again, we're going back to Moorcock there as well, and possibly an easier one to deal with than good and evil, because it's not clear that the courts of chaos, or chaos in this book, is evil. It's different with people like Ariok, who really want blood and souls and stuff, but with this one, certainly chaos is a form of creativity, that primal force of creativity, and it is up to everyone, I suppose, who comes out of chaos to impose their own will and order on that chaos, and we've seen what happens out of it. Unfortunately, we bring all our mistakes and stuff with us when we do that. So we can also look at all the flaws in creation being already there from the Father, from the Creator, that being Dworkin, I guess. The only thing that doesn't really fit in, I guess, is the unicorn and the Jewel of Judgment. And we'll maybe have to talk about that one more in a later addition to these videos, because right now we only know that the unicorn brought the Jewel of Judgment to Dworkin, and in some way is the mother of Oberon, which, yeah, you figure that one out. I'm not going there. But what I personally really appreciate about it is the way we also set up that big reveal about Oberon, who has been apparently guiding everything from behind these, from behind a lot of things, because it turns out, as final reveal and cliffhanger, so to speak, at the end of the novel, that Ganelon has in truth been Oberon in disguise, which you may have realized when you look at the name of Ganelon and compare it to all those wonderful references in pop culture that we get in these books. But I'm digressing here, I know. What I want to look at, though, however, with that, is that I guess in a way we can never leave our parents behind, and even if they take on a different shape, we always they always watch us in some way or another. And I guess that's not necessarily a good thing, but not necessarily a bad thing. But on the other hand, I guess what we learn here as well is that we need to organize and repair in some way or other, or at least clarify our relationships in a family, in those kind of things. Random has to go and find Martin. On the other hand, Oberon has to come back and reveal himself, and with Corwin, well, I guess up to a point he has to go back to his Earth that has, like Shadow Earth, that has made up such a large part of his personality, and reconnect more with his friend there, the lawyer friend that we also met in like the previous novel when I didn't really talk about it that much, right? So we have that connection with those shadow people, and the important aspect there is that Corwin starts treating some of those people from the shadows as more than just the figments of his imagination. They are becoming friends in a way, right? He takes them as actual people. Something they didn't do in the first novel, when they just like, you know, sent a couple 100,000 people from a shadow world that worship them as gods into, you know, battle and just let them all die. So we come to a point where Corwin learns, at least, and possibly others as well, learn to respect the shadows as more than just playthings and toys in a way. He's still reflecting. I mean, there's a scene where he reflects about that. It's like, it's our creation and our toys, but they can be dangerous toys and stuff like that. Yeah, I know. But there is certainly more than just, yeah, it's my right to do with those things whatever I want. And I think that's an important step in the evolution of Corwin, the character here as well. Another interesting facet is, of course, that weird time loop shift kind of thing with the steampunk kind of style of like arm prosthesis that Corwin brings back from Tyrnanok in the previous book, and then gives to Benedict, and Benedict applies it to him, and then we'll see what happens with that in the next one. There is a certain level of circularity going on there that I find very interesting, because apparently time is also, I mean, time is very relative in these worlds, so who really cares? But I feel the important aspects are in this one that we haven't spoken about before is like to really clarify the birth of order out of chaos, which is obviously a metaphysical position that you may or may not take. The clarification that good and evil are not the metric that we apply to these like poles, so to speak, in the universe. But order and chaos, and what that means, that, you know, what that means for like morality, or like taking people as, you know, moral actors. And then there's another aspect there, which is just like, why are people doing what they are doing? And the question is like, how much does that actually matter? Because the question at the end is like, why is Brand doing what he's doing? Why is he trying to, you know, destroy creation and build something new? Because we also learn that is possible, and that is maybe the goal of the whole thing, or like at least of some people, is to destroy Amber's pattern and order and create a new one that is less flawed, because maybe it's easier to, you know, rebuild in a way. And the question there is like, why is Brand doing that? And Corwin's answer is, at the end of the day, I don't care. It's his actions that count. And that is, well, it's certainly one of the big questions, like, are we judging people for their actions or for their motives? Are we judging people, or are we even going to look for the reasons why people become criminals, murderers, what have you? Or are we just going to sit back and it's like, you know, they did it, that's it? And it's one of the big questions that we as humans always face. It's one of those that's kind of connected with the questions like, is there something in us that's going beyond, you know, biology, sort of, because, you know, with soul and free will and all of that crap, those questions after motive suddenly become a bit more, you know, important. Now there's more to be talked about here. Let's talk about one of the more negative aspects of it. and that is the gender issue. Yeah, I had to bring it up, of course, because there's like a lot of princes in Amber, and there's a few princesses, and they always take a back seat, and they always are. Yeah, I mean, they're never like considered to actually be, contenders for the throne of Amber and all of these things. They're like, yeah, they are kind of, they don't count really. Now, the important question there is this Corwin's view of the matter, or is this Roger Zelazny's view? Can we accuse these books of sexism, or should we accuse Corwin of the latter? Which, yeah, good question, and never one that's answered easily. But I feel I should bring it up because I've talked about it with other authors, and just because I love this one and really hate Wheel of Time, I can't get like Zelazny get off easily here as well, just because of that. And I don't think it is as bad as it appears, because there's certainly a bias on the brothers' part of things, right? There's certainly a bias there. And Corwin does like more or less like ignore and disregard his sisters, and we see with the character of Fiona, who kind of comes into her own in this one as one of the prime actors behind all of it. We see that that Zelazny does not like say like, yeah, all women are basically incapable of like looking for power, trying to capture power or whatnot. But it kind of comes as a surprise, because in the first 3 books, they are treated kind of like secondary characters in a lot of ways, especially what's her name, Florimel, is looked down upon as sort of like less intelligent or whatever, which rubs me the wrong way. And unfortunately, I feel it's something that we have to come to terms with older books, which is not an excuse. Now, I know I need to say that, because with like Wheel of Time, some people always like, yeah, but it's a product of its time and stuff like that. It's like, yeah. I assume that views on gender roles have shifted over time. I'm aware of that. That doesn't like give us the permission to just ignore it and like chalk it up. That's like, yeah, well, that's that. There's no excuse for it. And it's certainly in the first couple of books here, there is a bias, a gender bias, that I feel is problematic. The interesting aspect in that regard is that like mothers never really become important. This is pure patriarchy. Now you could argue that it's kind of fucked up, and you can say, if you have like pure patriarchy and only men dicking around with power, you can see where it leads, which is a dysfunctional family that is about to destroy reality. That's my interpretation, and I just wanted to bring up and acknowledge the fact that from the outside, it doesn't look real well, and I assume that Corwin's bias there is part of it, but only part of it. Now let's look at one other thing that I really wanted to talk about, and that is a prose thing again. And that is the Hell Rides. They show up more and more in these books, and they are now called Hell Rides. It's always when they're shifting shadows, and I think it's a very interesting thing to do. Because there's a marked difference between like the prose outside of the Hell Rides and the prose in those Hell Rides, which are very much like a stream of consciousness kind of thing, with reality shifting around. And I just love the way, and I wanted to point out the way Zelazny uses prose to portray that shifting of reality, which is partly activity of the people of Amber, and partly, there's like a certain agency behind it, but it's also like clear that there's all kinds of things happening around it, which I feel like the stream of consciousness writing that you have there, with all the surrealism creeping in, all the completely unreal elements dropping in, all the over the top like fantasticness. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. Makes this very, very captivating in a way. It's like I read those and I'm like, wow, I can almost see the trip you're on there. And that's, yeah, I just felt it's interesting to see how through a shift in prose, through a shift in tone, you can purvey different atmospheres, which is, you all know that. But how far you can go with that when it comes to portraying like a shift in reality through a shift in prose. And I think that's something this book does really well, because there's a lot more hell rides in this one than in earlier ones, I guess, with everyone riding around and doing all these fun things. Yeah. Now we've sorted out all of that. We have had our like building up all the puzzles, building up all the confusion, building up all the conflicting evidence and not conflicting evidence, but conflicting testimony in book 3. Now in book 4, we clear up most of that, because for our final book, the Courts of Chaos, we need a clear run, the final big action scene of our overall story. So we need to know where to go with this. And where that will be, I guess we'll find out tomorrow. Well, I'll find out in like 2 hours or so, but you'll find out tomorrow. Until then, cheers.